The Grand Story of Henry. While Gordon was at the works, Henry took charge of the express. He enjoyed the change of pace and was very popular with the passengers. Although this made him a tad boastful, Henry always made sure his passengers reached their connections on time. As the days went by, the weather changed. The sky became greyer, and soon the rain started pouring. The sky became greyer, and soon the rain started pouring. None of the engines wanted to leave their cosy sheds, but they knew they had to. One day, just after Henry had received his new coat of paint, it rained harder than ever. The whole island was pelted from all sides by raindrops the size of coals. When Henry's crew came to fire him up for the day, they were soaked down to their socks. "Oh, come on, Henry," shivered his driver. "Oh, let's go collect our coaches." "I shan't," grumbled Henry. "I'm not about to go out in that weather." "What's the matter, Henry?" teased the other engines. "Afraid the rain will spoil your new paint?" They began to sing. Once an engine attached to a train was afraid of a few drops of rain. He went into a tunnel and squeaked for his funnel and never came out again. The engines all laughed, but Henry didn't think it was so funny. He left the sheds without another word. As soon as Henry left the sheds, he was buffeted on all sides by the icy rain, and by the time he arrived at the station, he was absolutely miserable. It was lucky the wind was blowing so loudly, otherwise the passengers would have gotten an earful of Henry's choice words about the weather. At last, the guard blew his whistle, and Henry bravely headed off into the downpour. The rain made the journey difficult. It made the rails too wet to grip, and Henry's wheels kept slipping. Henry tried his hardest, but he saved his greatest effort for Gordon's Hill. His driver dropped plenty of sand as they began their climb up the steep slope. "Are you ready, Henry?" called the driver. "Pull hard when I tell you. 1, 2, 3, pull!" Henry pulled as hard as he could, slowly making his way up the hill. "Come on!" panted Henry. But the wind had other ideas. It picked up some branches that had fallen by the tracks and threw them at Henry. "Ouch!" he exclaimed. Unfortunately for Henry, the wind was rough and kept blowing branches at him. The passengers were worried, and Henry's paint didn't look so new, but he didn't give up. He slowly struggled upwards until... "Hurrah!" cried Henry. "I've done it!" The passengers all cheered, but Henry and his crew knew the journey was far from over. The journey went without trouble until they came to the tunnel. As Henry rushed through it, he noticed something blocking the exit. His driver stopped the train just before the mouth of the tunnel. There, outside the tunnel, was a large mound of earth. The driver went to inspect it. "Seems all this rain's gone and weakened the roof of the tunnel mouth," he called. "Looks like we shan't be going any further for a while." "Nonsense!" huffed Henry. "I'll just push through it. We mustn't keep the passengers waiting." The driver and fireman weren't sure, but agreed. "Ready, Henry?" said the driver. 1, 2, 3, push!" With an almighty heave, Henry began to push his way through the mound of earth. His steam shot so high that it knocked some more earth down onto his boiler. Soil and plants coated Henry's dome and cab roof, But he pressed on. Henry pushed and pushed and pushed, until at last he had made it through the mound of earth. After that, it was much easier, and Henry reached the end of the line with no further delays. His new coat of paint had been ruined, but Henry didn't mind. The passengers all thanked Henry and his crew for their hard work, and the big green engine headed off for a quick rest. But the story soon spread. By the time Henry arrived back at the sheds, the other engines were all talking about his run. They began to sing again, but this time it sounded quite different. Once an engine attached to a train powered through a deluge of rain. He stood up to the storm, battled against it in top form, and not once did he complain. Henry just smiled and went happily to sleep.